Hey everyone, Robyn Openshaw. I am your Bitcoin girl. If you are Gen X or you're a boomer and you're looking for just bite-sized pieces of education, why should I get involved? Can't I just ride the whole stock market, bond portfolio, real estate thing? Like, isn't this Bitcoin thing for the kids or some kind of scam, or maybe the criminals use it? So I want to kind of debunk two of the biggest myths about Bitcoin, just not comprehensively, but I want to tell you something that I think will really make you think about this whole idea that it consumes a lot of energy, and that it's the tool of criminals. So I just want to have a short little video about that. But to start with, there's some news this week that Western Union has chosen Solana to work with to make their stablecoin. And the reason this matters, the reason I bring it up, is that there's so many people who think that because they hear about XRP so much that it must be the crypto to invest in. I bought XRP before I bought any other crypto. I had no learning path, I had no mentor. And I pretty quickly figured out after I bought a pretty embarrassing amount of XRP in March of 2020, I pretty quickly figured out that the guys who were it was a gay couple, and they were telling me that XRP was the best bet with all the different cryptocurrencies out there, which are just a dizzying array even back then. Now I think there's 2 million registered cryptocurrencies. Okay, 99.999% of them are going to go to zero. You guys, most of them are a bad investment, just like with the dot-com bubble. But anyway, XRP is probably the one that gets the most like name recognition. People are hopped up about it. I was just talking to the owner of our pickleball club, and she was like, I don't really buy Bitcoin. I'm pretty much all in on XRP. And XRP is like the OPEC nations are now using it as money. I was like, are you sure about that? I said, let's look it up on ChatGPT right now. So we did, and it's not true. Anyways, I've been watching XRP for years. I was underwater on it for like 3.5 years, which nobody has been in the 16-year history of Bitcoin. I don't care if you buy at the all-time high price, you have never been underwater for 3 years on Bitcoin during granted, it's only 16-year history, but there are some inferences we can make from a 16-year history. So here we are. XRP says they're the payment rails of the world, that everybody's going to be using it as money. They list a bunch of partners on their site. If you dig into it, I haven't personally, but I have seen people do it. Some of the partners they claim to have had or to have, they don't even have. Maybe they gave XRP a trial run and bailed on them, or they've never used them. So there's a lot of things that are super shady about XRP, and I wouldn't ever invest in it again. I waited nearly 4 years before I could recoup my original investment, actually, and I made some money too. And it's tanked since then. It's back down to about what I paid for it, whatever that was, 5.5 years ago. So just wanted to share that with you, that if XRP was all that, and if it was the payment rails of the world, even though it hasn't been for the last 15, 16 years they've been telling us, wouldn't Western Union work with XRP or Ripple instead of Solana to create their stablecoin? All right, cut on that topic. Really quickly, I wanted to mention that I have probably heard half a dozen at least certified accountants. Okay, these are people who get master's degrees in accounting, and then they have to go through a very rigorous test. They know a lot about math and they know a lot about accounting, obviously. I've heard them hold court on Bitcoin and talk about why it's so amazing. But one thing, without me going deep into what a triple ledger is, but the accountants geek out about, and it's what attracts a lot of accountants to Bitcoin, is when they find out that it's auditing itself, it's auditing every block every 10 minutes. There's no human being involved to screw it up. There's distributed ledgers, I think 22,000 of them all over the world. And there's a triple ledger, which is unheard of. So single ledger obviously creates a lot of possibility for corruption. Double ledger, still problematic. Bitcoin is the triple ledger, and it's one of the use cases that we just don't talk about enough. And so the biggest um, sort of use of funds that criminals use are fiat currencies. Okay, so like for instance, the dollar. So there's something like $2 trillion a year of corrupt or criminal activity that happens in dollars, but cash is the ultimate. untraceable, all that stuff. The stupidest way in the world to do criminal activity is to use a cryptocurrency, especially one that if you're using, especially if you're using one of the publicly traded know your customer exchanges like Coinbase, et cetera. There have been big crimes committed with crypto that go through the big exchanges, and literally the Department of Justice can subpoena Coinbase or Gemini or Kraken or whoever in minutes. They've done it before, and they get the bad guy, and it's the worst way ever to commit crime. But it's the narrative that Elizabeth Warren is going with. She makes a lot of money on traditional banking. And so I just want to point out that it's really quite a fiction that Bitcoin enables crime. I mean, sure, I'm sure that there's people who, especially back in the day, would use Bitcoin to buy their weed or whatever, but it's really not a good way to commit crimes. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to touch on is just the energy use. So many Bitcoiners are going to places where there's an excess of energy that isn't being captured, and they're doing business there. It's in their own interest to do it because if they were in New York City competing for energy, it would be expensive for them. So they're going to places where there's some kind of operation that has excess energy, they can use it basically for free. And so everybody wins. The excess energy is captured and it's used in a way that creates money. I also want to just mention about this because we go on and on and on about the really cool projects where some big Bitcoin mining operation is using the energy from a waterfall. We could go on all day about that, but I do just want to point out that you probably don't remember, but that was the big argument against email. So when email was just brand new, the post office was saying the most reliable way to communicate information is the U.S. Post Office, and email is going to destroy the energy grid, and it's going to be so energy intensive, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyways, here we are, all these years later. 25 years we've had email, 30 years, something like that. So I just wanted to point out that it's a really quick and dirty, cheap way to get a narrative going in Americans' minds. And it turns out it really isn't particularly true. I mean, Chinese miners left China when China tried to ban Bitcoin. That's getting into a whole other thing to debunk, which is that a country can ban it. Listen, India has tried, China has tried, Putin has said no country can ban it. So if you can't beat them, then join them. And so Russia actually mines Bitcoin. So the Chinese miners, when mining was banned in China, just up and moved to Texas, where they could get cheap energy and they don't have the scary tyrannical government breathing down their neck. So anyway, countries, states, they've figured out not to ban Bitcoin because it just means that capital flees the country and that it will find a place to reside. It will find a place to thrive. So this wasn't brand new beginner content, but I hope that you'll listen to my short videos as you have time. I hope you'll join us. Down below is a link to join our Wednesday night mastermind. Give it every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Just give it 90 minutes. And we will bring you up to speed over time. We've had students who started with us in January. I'm talking to you in October of 2025, who I consider now to be really qualified intermediate Bitcoin experts who could probably sit here and tell you dozens of use cases for Bitcoin, how it's going to change the world and how it's personally changing their future, and likely to create legacy wealth. If it goes the way it's gone for 16 years, it will create legacy wealth and optionality for their children and their grandchildren. What other options do we have? Our children, if you have millennial or Gen Z kids, they can't get in on real estate and see it go through the roof like the boomers did. Good for the boomers. They're millionaires because they just literally stayed in their house for decades and paid it off. That's not going to happen for our kids. Our kids can't even qualify to buy a house right now. It's not going to work for them to come into the bond market because they're going to lose money against inflation. It's not going to work for them to come into the stock market, okay, do the Warren Buffett play, because right now the stock market is obscenely overpriced. So anyway, what our children do have as an option is Bitcoin. So if you don't learn for yourself, learn for them and bring them along. I have varying degrees of success with my 4 children. All 4 of them get Bitcoin for gifts. I don't give them real gifts anymore. I give them little bits and pieces of Bitcoin and tell them that they can't use it. They can borrow against it someday if they need to, but they're not allowed to sell it until 2030. Then, of course, when it gets to 2030, I'll probably try and talk them into continuing to keep it. If I haven't by then, my goal by then is that they are Bitcoin experts. And it's bound to happen that their friends and their in-laws, some of them get into Bitcoin, and then it's not just mom talking about it, it's a lot more of their friends and family. So because I have varying degrees of interest among my children, and one of my children who just says, Mom, I don't get it. I have to prepare for their future because I don't know if they're going to miss this window. So I am piling in and preparing for them to maybe or maybe not get it and maybe have to borrow against it and not do it in a way where I'm giving my kids handouts. There's ways to handle all this. We talk about this on Wednesday nights. This and hundreds of other issues related to how the world is changing because of stable coins, because of Bitcoin, because of crypto. We used to be less focused. When we started our mastermind 5 years ago, we were less focused and we talked about all the cryptocurrencies that we thought had promise. We are much, much, much more focused on Bitcoin, and we'll help you understand why. So I'll see you on Wednesday night. Look for the link down below. It gives you a 3rd month free. And also use the coupon code Robyn, ROBYN, for an extra $50 off. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.